My wife's book club wasn't what she claimed. What I discovered when I came home early one night left me questioning everything. I, 34M, never considered myself the suspicious type. 12 years of marriage had built a foundation of trust one thought was unshakable. That changed last Thursday. My wife had been attending her weekly book club for about 6 months. Every Thursday, like clockwork, she'd dress up a little nicer than usual, dab on that perfume I got her last Christmas, and head out around 7 p.m. She'd return home around 11, sometimes midnight, always with a glass of wine or two in her system, chatting about whatever book they'd discussed. I never questioned it. Why would I? She seemed happy, and I was glad she had something that was just hers. God knows we both needed our own spaces after being cooped up together during the pandemic. Last Thursday, my meeting got canceled. I texted her that I'd be home early, but got no response. Not unusual. She keeps her phone on silent during book club out of respect for the discussion. Fair enough. I stopped by the liquor store on my way home, thinking I'd surprise her with a nice bottle for when she got back. The guy behind the counter, someone I'd never met before, smiled as he rang me up. Hey, don't I know your wife? Blonde, about this tall. He gestured to his shoulder. She was in here earlier with some guy. My stomach dropped. Must be someone else, I said, taking my change. But doubt had already taken root. I drove home, my mind racing. Was I being paranoid? Probably. There are plenty of blonde women in this city. I pulled into our driveway at 8:30 p.m., and there it was, her car, parked right next to another vehicle I didn't recognize. A sleek black SUV with out-of-state plates. I sat in my car for a good 5 minutes, staring at our front door. The lights were on in the living room, but the curtains were drawn. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. I entered as quietly as possible. The house wasn't silent. Music was playing, something jazzy and low, and there were voices coming from the living room. I heard my wife laugh, that genuine laugh I hadn't heard in a while. Part of me wanted to announce myself, to walk in casually as if nothing was wrong. The other part, the part that eventually won, made me creep closer, staying out of sight. I don't think we should be doing this, I heard my wife say, though her tone suggested otherwise. Your husband won't be home for hours, a male voice replied. Besides, you said yourself he never suspects a thing. I froze in the hallway, my hand gripping the bottle of wine so tightly I thought it might shatter. I should confront them, I thought. Storm in there and demand answers. But I couldn't move. I know, but I'm starting to feel guilty. He's a good man. He doesn't deserve this. You're overthinking it, the man said. We're all adults here, and what he doesn't know won't hurt him. I'd heard enough. I rounded the corner, prepared for the worst. My wife and some stranger in a compromising position, my marriage crumbling before my eyes. What I found instead left me speechless. My wife was sitting on the couch, fully clothed, across from a man in a business suit. Between them on the coffee table was a stack of papers, financial documents, and what looked like property listings. My wife's laptop was open, displaying spreadsheets. They both looked up, startled by my sudden appearance. You're home early, my wife said, her face flushing. She quickly closed her laptop. The man stood, extending his hand. You must be the husband. I've heard a lot about you. I didn't take his hand. What's going on here? Who are you? My wife stood now too, looking nervous. This isn't how I wanted you to find out. Find out what? My voice was rising. That there's no book club? That you've been lying to me for months. The man cleared his throat. I should probably go. No, I said firmly. I want answers. My wife sighed, gesturing for me to sit down. Fine. You deserve to know. What followed was a confession, but not the kind I'd feared. There was no affair, no secret lover. The truth was something else entirely. 6 months ago, my wife had received a substantial inheritance when her estranged aunt passed away. She hadn't told me about it. Instead, she'd been working with this financial advisor, the man in our living room, to invest the money. The book club had been a cover for their meetings and for her financial literacy classes. Why keep it a secret? I asked, feeling a strange mix of relief and betrayal. She couldn't meet my eyes. You know how things have been tight since your company downsized. I saw how much it hurt your pride when I had to pick up extra shifts to cover the bills. I didn't want you to feel less than. So you lied to me for half a year? I was trying to surprise you, she said. The investments have been doing well. I was going to tell you once I had enough for a down payment on a house. Our dream house, the one we've been talking about since we got married. The financial advisor excused himself, leaving us to what became the most honest conversation we'd had in years. It wasn't just about the money. It was about how we'd stopped communicating, how we'd both been protecting each other's feelings at the expense of honesty. The inheritance wasn't life-changing, enough for a down payment and some security, but not enough to solve all our problems. She'd been afraid I'd want to use it to pay off debts immediately, rather than investing for our future. She didn't trust me with that decision, and that hurt more than any imagined infidelity. In the days that followed, we talked more than we had in years. Really talked. About money, about trust, about the future. She showed me the investments she'd made, the classes she'd taken. I was impressed by her initiative, but wounded by her secrecy. I should have trusted you, she admitted on the third night of these conversations. But part of me was enjoying having something that was just mine, something I was good at. I understood that feeling all too well. After losing my management position and taking a step down in my career, I'd felt like less of a provider, less of a partner. We'd both been carrying shame we didn't need to carry alone. We decided to go to counseling, not because our marriage was failing, but because we wanted it to thrive. We needed tools to communicate better, to be honest even when honesty was uncomfortable. It's been 3 weeks since that night. The book club is now actually a financial planning session that we attend together. We're learning about investments, planning for retirement, figuring out what our dream home might actually look like. There are still moments when the trust feels fragile. Sometimes I find myself checking her phone when she leaves it on the counter, then feeling ashamed of my suspicion. Sometimes she gets defensive when I ask about upcoming expenses, as if I'm questioning her judgment. But we're working on it. Day by day, conversation by conversation. Last night, she showed me a property listing, a modest house with a yard big enough for the garden she's always wanted and the workshop I've dreamed of building. It's within our budget, especially with her inheritance as a down payment. What do you think? She asked, nervous hope in her voice. Could this be our fresh start? Looking at the listing, I realized something important. The betrayal I felt wasn't about the money itself. It was about the future she'd been planning without me. Now she was inviting me in, asking me to build that future together. It could be, I said, taking her hand. But we already had our fresh start. It was when you decided to be honest with me. She smiled, tears in her eyes. And when you decided to listen. We're closing on the house next month. The financial advisor is now working with both of us. And every Thursday, we still set aside time just for us. Sometimes to talk finances, sometimes to actually discuss a book, but always with complete honesty. I still think about that night sometimes, how differently things could have gone if I'd jumped to accusations instead of staying to listen. How close we came to breaking what we'd spent 12 years building. My wife's book club wasn't what she claimed. But what I discovered wasn't the betrayal I feared. It was a wake-up call we both needed. Sometimes the truth is painful, but living with lies, even well-intentioned ones, is far more damaging in the end.